Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a balance patch that's bringing cards from 5 to 4, 4 to 3, and some very much anticipated and waited for balance changes that hopefully will work out for the better. And so starting off, we have all of the cards dropping from 5 to 4, Zabu, Sauron, Shanna, Dazzler, and Shadow King. Of those, I think the most notable are Zabu and Sauron. Both of those are in very good spots right now. Shanna, Dazzler are decent. They're definitely usable, but they're a little bit less advantageous. And then Shadow King, I don't think you should probably ever buy Shadow King in his current state. And then we have cards dropping from 4 to 3. We have the crowd favorite M'Baku, we have Orga, and Atuma. All of these are usable in their own cases. Atuma probably the most flexible, but still very counterable by things like Magneto, and just a lot of work to go into it, but it is a 410. And then jumping down to the meat, the thing that we are all, I think, all hoping for, waiting for, is the Thanos change, the Shuri changes, and what those mean for the metagame. So we have Thanos going from a 6'11 to a 6'10, which alone is not huge. They're bringing back a little bit of the power that they gave him, so with the Power Stone, he's now in line with an Infinite, which I think is decent. We have Space Stone. This one is one of the biggest changes for Thanos. It is no longer going to allow you to move cards out of that lane. They can no longer use it to push cards into Plunder Castle, into Sanctum Sanctorum, into a lane that's locked down. And at the same time, they can no longer move their Lockjaw to rotate 3 additional cards. So this is going to drop the consistency of Thanos quite a bit. I think on initial glance, it doesn't seem like it would be all that much, but I think this is going to be a very big impact in how he plays and how efficient he is. And so I think we would have to, if we want to still see Thanos in the current meta, we would have to kind of recreate what we already think of how Thanos is built. And then we have Quinjet. Quinjet now reduces cost to a minimum of 1. I'm both excited and saddened by this. I have been recently running a Moon Zoo where you double down on your Titania, your Ant-Man, your 1-cost cards, your She-Hulk, and then flood them onto the board for relatively free for the most part. That can no longer happen with Quinjet. It's still doable, but Quinjet just doesn't have as much value there now. And so I think in that sense, it's probably very rarely going to get used. Outside of, in addition to like Moon Girl, Devil Dino, Sentinel builds, we probably won't see much Quinjet. But this is a huge nerf to the consistency of Thanos. So Thanos no longer has those free resources to rotate or to play onto the board. That's giving utility, that's giving card draw, that's giving all of these added benefits. They now have to actually pay for those, and whenever you think of dropping 2 stones, that can be a pretty big impact onto what they can do. So if they ramp into a turn 5 leech, they can't do leech alongside 2 more stones that they just happen to have. And then next we have Red Skull. Red Skull is going from a 515 to a 513. Then his ongoing is changed from enemy cards having +2 at that location to only +1. So in the just straight use case of him, he is increasing from a 5'7 at minimum to a 5'9. However, whenever used in unison with a Shuri, this is no longer quite as high of a high roll. 26 is still very, very potent, and I don't know that that is enough to change the Shuri bomb of stats that it can throw into the board, but I think it is a good starting place. And then we have She-Hulk. She-Hulk is going from a 6'10 to a 6'9. So She-Hulk is incredibly flexible. She can slot into just about any deck that you might be floating energy with, so anything that you'll use as a Sunspot, anything that uses a wave, you can do a lot of really big plays and out-tempo your opponent a lot of times with the She-Hulk, so they're bringing that down a little bit. I think this will have an impact, but I think she will still see a lot of use. And then I'm going to skip Arrow real fast into Mystique, Absorbing Man, and Taskmaster. So this is a change not necessarily to the card itself, but how it interacts with cards that are already on the board. So they now have to be in play for that power to be copied. And so if you maintain initiative against a Shuri play and you're running Shang-Chi and you take out their Red Skull, Taskmaster is now going to be 0. It is no longer going to set its power equal to that last card played, which I think is pretty impactful. There's a lot of times where you can out-position your opponent in one lane with your Shang-Chi, but it still felt like you were battling to win the other 2 because they had the massive bomb of Taskmaster coming down. this now changes, and I think it makes it a little bit easier. And these are all small hits to Shuri. Shuri herself doesn't have a direct nerf or a direct change, but the cards that are most commonly used in the best shell for her are being tweaked just a little bit. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how this impacts the overall feel of Shuri, and if she maintains her current state where she just feels really, really tough to play into or against and really consistent. And then we have the change for Arrow. Arrow is going from move all cards to move the last card the enemy played at this location. So it's kind of interesting that they're using the last card, because typically for me as a player, I'm going to be playing my best cards first. And if I'm not intentionally playing around Arrow, at that point, it could still move my card. So if I'm running on the last turn a Taskmaster and an Ebony Maw, a Taskmaster and a Titania, a Taskmaster and whatever, Taskmaster is going to be the first card that I play. And so this just directly does not interfere with that. And so typically my last card is going to be my weakest card, where I'm just trying to fill in the extra energy that I have. So it's kind of interesting to see how this plays out. I think she still counters Shuri decks very, very well, but now she doesn't quite fit as well into the majority of other decks, outside of ones that use Wave, ones that expect the opponent to only be dropping that one card, outside of like Death Wave, outside of Sandman ramp decks. She's no longer as impactful because you can't guarantee what's going to get pulled. And so if as a result we see less Arrow overall, I think Shuri, even with the power changes, is still in a really decent spot. We'll see. We'll see. Rest in peace, Arrow. You're still usable, but much less so. It now has to be used in kind of a cohesive combo, rather than just being thrown into any deck and expecting it to be able to be a turn 6 to just win the game. And then we have a couple of changes to Morbius and Null. Morbius and Null, they no longer update in your hand or in your deck. For Morbius, if you had discarded cards previously, you could tell exactly what his power was going to be. Not necessarily a big issue in most cases. With Null, where it ended up breaking some of that functionality was like with Mr. Negative. It would count that power while it was in the deck, and then if you destroyed any cards, he would not be 0 whenever he came out of the Mr. Negative. And so I'm really excited to test out the Null in the Mr. Negative decks, because I think this makes him from unplayable and just kind of avoidable to potentially a really good choice in Mr. Negative decks. And I think only time will tell if it's actually fun or if it's more of a meme, but I'm excited to actually try it, knowing that it functions correctly. We have a text update to Widow's Bite and then a slew of bug fixes. One of those to note is the cards that lose their ability due to leech no longer get that ability back if they're pulled back in play by another card. So if you rotate them with Lockjaw, if for whatever reason you discard them and resummon them, I'm guessing that removes all of that, which is interesting. I do think we will still see leech because he was not directly nerfed or changed in this patch, but I think with the consistency drivers of Thanos being hit so hard, I think we will see it much less often, and when we do, I think the games will still be winnable. It just feels bad to have leech played against you. So for me, these are kind of all in line with what I thought the patch would be. I didn't think they would nerf Shuri directly or change Shuri. I thought it was much more directed at the Red Skull, and it does turn out to be that way, but I'm curious if it's enough. What do you guys think? I think Shuri is still going to be in a pretty good spot, but of course we will need some time to shake out the meta and see how it feels overall. But I think Shuri is probably going to be just fine when hiding the Red Skull behind a Cosmo, behind an Armor, behind some of those cards that are typically ran in the Shuri deck. Let me know what you think of the updates in the comment section down below. I am going to be going live on twitch.tv/TLSG Snap very shortly to test out some of the changes and to wait for Negasonic to be released. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.